Hello dear friends, this is just a small sample of the many ghost islands that exist around the world. Opinion piece: Mythical Islands. Ptolemy spoke of them. Could the island of Avalon exist? They appear on a medieval British map. 650-year-old map shows two lost islands. Saint-Borondon appears on a French map from 1707. Nazis believed Thule was the homeland of the Aryans. Let's start. The case of ghost islands has been repeated many times throughout history. Among the more recent cases is that of Sandy Island, which in late 2012 was found on Google Maps, even though it doesn't exist in official records. It was called Sandy Island, and according to numerous charts, was a large island quietly suspended in the South Pacific. In fact, the first references we have to the island appear as early as 1876, thanks to the crew of the British Navy ship Velocity, who described the land as an idyllic setting bordered by a coral sea. All was well, all the charts included it as a feature on our maps, and as surprisingly, until recently, Sandy Island also appeared on Google Earth and Google Maps. It wasn't hard to find. You just had to place the cursor on a little point in between Australia and New Caledonia, and there was such perfect scenery. However, something happened a few years ago when it magically disappeared. Avalon. I have always been fascinated by the legend of the island of Avalon and King Arthur, and in the Canary Islands we have the island of Saint-Borondon, which appears and disappears if by magic, and has even been photographed. It is also said that shipwrecked sailors who get lost in the Bermuda Triangle reach some very strange islands that are not on the maps. Avalon is the name of a legendary island in Celtic mythology, somewhere in the British Isles, where, according to legend, apple trees bear tasty fruit all year round and 9 fairy queens live, including Morgan. Some believe it to be a fantasy, but some esotericists are convinced that Avalon exists in another dimension. Avalon is the place where the legendary King Arthur's sword is said to have been forged, and where he was sent to recuperate after being wounded in battle. The island was said to be the domain of Arthur's half-sister, the sorceress Morgana Le Fay, as well as her 8 sisters. From the 12th century onwards, Avalon became identified with Glastonbury in Somerset in connection with Celtic legends of a crystal isle paradise. Atlantis. Atlantis, first mentioned by Plato, was a large island that lay west of the Pillars of Hercules, or Strait of Gibraltar, in the Atlantic Ocean. It was said to be a peaceful but powerful kingdom, lost beneath the waves after the gods unleashed a violent earthquake, and as punishment for waging war against Athens. For the Greeks and Romans, Thule existed at the northernmost edge of the unknown world. It first appeared in a lost work by the Greek explorer Pytheas, who supposedly found it in the 4th century before Christ. The Nazis believed that Thule was the ancient homeland of the Aryans. Around 325 before Christ, the navigator Pytheas sailed north from modern-day Marseilles into the Atlantic to find what he knew as Britain, as well as a small island which he named Thule. Later, in the year 100, the mathematician and geographer Ptolemy included the island in his atlas, and it even appeared in the translating records of Florentine scholars from the early 1400s until the 17th century. The island of Friesland. The brothers Antonio and Niccolo Zeno, known for sailing the North Atlantic around 1400, was the subject of writings by their descendant, who in 1558 published a map and charts of an island called Friesland, supposedly halfway between northern Norway and Scotland. Bass Island. In 1576, more than a few sailors were looking for a passage to Asia via northwest Europe. On one such expedition, Captains Martin Frobisher and James Newton claimed to have found an island full of fruit and great forests. They named it Bus or Bass, after the type of boat they were on. In Greek mythology, the Fortunate Isles or Islands of the Blessed are the place where virtuous souls enjoyed a perfect rest after death, equivalent to the paradise of other beliefs about the afterlife, the sacred place where the immortal souls of virtuous humankind and heroic warriors are to rest in a blissful and happy existence, amidst green and ever-flowering landscapes under the sun, as opposed to Tartarus. They have often been identified with the Christian's heaven. Other islands. Devil Island is a legendary island that has generally been located in the vicinity of Newfoundland and the Labrador Peninsula. The name was given because it was supposed to be inhabited by wild beasts and demons that lured sailors and then devoured them. Also known as the Island of the Seven Cities, Antillia was a 15th century cartographic phenomenon said to lie far to the west of Spain and Portugal. Stories of its existence are connected to an Iberian legend in which 7 Visigoth bishops and their parishioners fled Muslim conquerors in the 8th century, sailing west and eventually discovered an island where they founded 7 settlements. The bishops burnt their ships so that they could never return to their ancient homeland. Brazil Island, or High Brazil, is a ghost island somewhere in the Atlantic Ocean and has been known in various forms since its first appearance in Irish mythology. Once identified with the island of Saint-Borondon, the said ghost island would have been located in Europe, off the coast of Ireland, so it doesn't seem to be related to the South American country discovered by Portuguese explorers in the early 1500s and Christianized Brazil. Chile. Friendship Island is an urban legend about an alleged island located in southern Chile, in the Aysén region. In the Chilean media, it is considered a ghost island. During the 1980s, several radio amateurs in Chile claimed to be in contact with a group belonging to a foreign spiritual congregation based on one of the islands of the Chiloé archipelago. Their only contact with the outside world was a radio and a boat, and they kept themselves away from the outside world. According to the accounts of the alleged visitors, Friendship Island was located in the Aysén region, between Chonos and Guaitecas archipelagos. In the interior of the island, there is also said to be a rare metal mine, the production of which would be used to pay the community's expenses. The inhabitants were Nordic in appearance and very tall. The islands of Felipux and Pontchartrain. It was 1783, and on the border of the USA and Canada, Lake Superior had 2 islands, which were to be part of the Treaty of Paris between the Americans and Great Britain. Their exact location on the hundreds of maps of the time meant that they would become part of US territory once the agreement came into force. The problem was that they had to be found, and they were never found. Canary Islands. Saint-Borondon is a mythical island located somewhere in the Atlantic Ocean and related to the voyages of the Irish monk Saint-Borondon the Navigator in search of an earthly paradise or garden of delights. The island of Saint-Borondon is a popular legend from the Canary Islands about a land that had been appearing and disappearing for several centuries. A French map of North Africa from 1707 shows the island to the west of the Canary Islands. The legend of Saint-Borondon became so strong in the Canary Islands that during the 16th, 17th, and 18th centuries expeditions of explorations were organized to discover and conquer it. The island was said to be densely wooded, full of rich fruits and flowers. There are centuries-old accounts of the island's appearance, cited by many witnesses and subsequent disappearance, while others attribute the strange apparition to some accumulation of clouds on the horizon or a mirage phenomenon. Others say that an advanced society descended from Atlantis lives there, hiding the island to protect itself from our predatory civilization, but that it will become visible when the world is liberated. This island would be located to the west of the archipelago, 550 kilometers west-northwest of El Hierro, and 220 kilometers southwest of La Palma, although other witnesses who claim to have seen it in place. Although other witnesses who claim to have seen it place it directly between the islands of La Palma, La Gomera, and El Hierro. Saint-Borondon would measure 480 kilometers long from north to south and 155 kilometers wide from east to west, forming a considerable concavity in the middle and rising on the sides into very high mountains, the largest being the one on the northern side. The island has been known in Europe as the Island of Saint-Borondon since its depiction by medieval cartographers. In the Canary Islands, the myth was enthusiastically adopted and adapted even its name to the local idiosyncrasy. Due to its strange characteristics and behavior, such as appearing and disappearing, or hiding behind a thick layer of fog clouds, it has been called the inaccessible, the non-trubada, the encubierta, the perdida, the encantada, and a few other names. Medieval map. A faded medieval map of Britain may reveal evidence of long-lost islands detailed in Welsh mythology, according to a new study. The 650-year-old map shows two long-lost islands in a medieval landscape in what is now Cardigan Bay, Wales. The Gouge map or Bodleian map is a late medieval map of the island of Britain. Its precise dates of production and ownership are unknown. It is named after Richard Gouge, who bequeathed the map to the Bodleian Library in 1809. He acquired the map from the estate of the antiquarian Thomas Martin in 1774. Several copies have been made, with an interactive online version created at Queen's University, Belfast. It measures 115 by 56 centimeters. In the area now known as Cardigan Bay, Wales, the map shows two islands that no longer exist. It's likely that the island existed in the 14th century, when a cartographer created the map, and were the remains of a much larger land known in Welsh mythology as Cantred Gwaelod or Maes Gwydno. Due to erosion, this land was swallowed by the ocean over a period of centuries, according to the mythology the researchers wrote in the study. Lost land. According to Welsh mythology, the land of Cantred Gwaelod has arisen before the ocean washed it away. In quotes. In the folklore of recent centuries, Gwydno is presented at the Rala of Cantred Gwaelod, and the flood is the result of negligence of the drunken gatekeeper, Seitienin. Hazlitt, honorary professor of science and engineering at Swansea University in Wales, and Willis, professor of Celtic at Jesus College, University of Oxford, wrote in the piece, the ancient writer Ptolemy wrote coordinates in his Geographia which suggest that the coast of Cattegat Bay was farther west than it is now. Ptolemy's description suggests that the coast of Wales has eroded substantially over millennia. The 6th century British monk Gildas referred to the Relentless Sea in his Latin sermon on the ruin and conquest of Britain. In this sermon, Gildas described how the people living near Cattegat Bay were caught between an invading force and an unruly sea. In quotes, the barbarians drive us into the sea. The sea throws us back upon the barbarians. Thus, two models of death await us. We are either killed or drowned. Gildas wrote, describing the plight of those caught in the conflict. Hazlitt and Willis said this writing may record a time when a natural disaster, such as a storm surge or tsunami, worsened the erosion problem and caused a considerable amount of land to be suddenly flooded. Research is ongoing, and it is possible that more evidence of this lost land will be found in the future. In quotes, we are planning to carry out geographical surveys along the current Cattegat Bay coastline to see if more evidence can be gathered about the post-glacial evolution of the coast, said Hazlitt. Breaking news. Mexico bans GM maize and glyphosate. Only 3 out of every 100 murders are solved in Mexico. Dominican Republic registered record tourism figures despite the passage of Fiona. Brazil chooses to cooperate with the BRICS instead of the US. The US bans Russian gas and sells its own to Europe at 40% higher prices. Qatar promises to supply Europe with 12 to 15 million tons of natural gas. US senator threatens Elon Musk for his pacifist stance on Ukraine. The son of Uganda's president offers 100 cows to Italy's next Prime Minister, Giorgia Meloni, for being, in quotes, fearless and sincere, he said. And that's all for today. Thanks a lot, dear friends.